Hello, brothers. Europe is currently being divided by the world. This time, there are no seats for them. Once, Europe was always aloof, looking down on everyone. Now it's finally their turn at the table. Look at what has happened recently. On February 24th, at the Blue Planet Conference, a rare unanimous war vote was cast regarding Ukraine. What does this mean? These three superpowers, which should have balanced each other, stood together in agreement. Europe is finally panicking. French President Macron begged Trump not to make Europe a target. Then, shortly after talking with Macron, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on the EU. What do you call this? It's clearly the start of dividing Europe. Europe should have been divided long ago. It is now just like the Qing dynasty. Both were incredibly wealthy yet heavily reliant on others. The Qing was divided by Europe. Now it's Europe's turn to be divided by the world. In this world, you can be poor, but you cannot be rich and lose to others. Europe is in this situation now. The veto power of the UK and France has not been used for decades. The 5 permanent members have actually become 3. Many may not know that for a long time. The world's largest economy was not the US, but the EU. This situation lasted until January 1, 1999, when the euro officially launched. The EU aimed to challenge the dominance of the dollar, to suppress the rise of the euro. The US launched the Kosovo War in March 1999. This caused the euro to devalue by 30%. By the end of 1999, the US surpassed the EU to become number 1 in the world. Was this a coincidence? Or was it intentional? Later, the Iraq War broke out, putting pressure on the US economy. The EU then took the opportunity to surpass the US. To maintain supremacy, the US fueled tensions in Ukraine in 2014. That year, Russia acted in Crimea, and the first round of conflict began. Europe began to decline again. Is this really a coincidence? Interestingly, due to the dual impact of the pandemic and the Ukraine conflict, the EU's GDP has now been surpassed. It has become the 3rd largest economy globally. Many have focused on Japan's decline, but Europe's decline is also remarkably rapid. From 1st to 3rd in just 20 years, the 3 powers are already dividing Europe. The attitude towards dividing Europe has not changed. Initially, it was mainly the Americans involved. After the Crimea conflict in 2014, Russia joined the division. The outcome of the Crimea conflict was Russia gaining territory, while the US GDP returned to number 1. Wall Street took control of Ukraine's fertile land. In today's terms, it means land for Russia, resources for the US. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has a similar plot. Since the Russia-Ukraine conflict began in 2022, capital from Europe has flowed to the US, while energy lifelines have been controlled by the US. The US does not allow the EU to sell Russian gas, while profiting from Europeans at 3 to 5 times the price. Recently, Russia and Ukraine stopped the natural gas transit agreement, meaning Russia and Europe are completely decoupling. Russia will rapidly become like Canada, heavily reliant on Eastern powers. The US will completely control Europe. Worse still, Europe's weapon stockpiles are rapidly depleting. The battlefield in Ukraine has consumed a large amount of Europe's weaponry. Additionally, the EU nations have been infiltrated by the US. In the last 2 years, the EU has massively procured US equipment. For instance, Germany spent over hundreds of billions on US F-35 fighters. France and Germany have their own technological capabilities they used to develop independently. Now, they are seeking help from the US. Faced with this reality, Europe is looking for new allies. In February, the UK invited the foreign minister to visit marking the first visit by a Chinese foreign minister to the UK. Why did the UK do this? It's because one family has to eat from two tables. If there's a chance to revive the glory of the empire, the British would certainly not mind teaming up with the US. Later, France also invited the foreign minister for further cooperation. On March 2, the chairman of the European Parliament's International Trade Committee stated that Europe has many common interests with Eastern powers. Why not ally with Europe? With Russia and the US showing signs of colluding to divide Europe, Ambassador Liu She's comments shattered European dreams. He said that China does not need to court allies. China has friends all over the world. He mentioned that China's independent foreign policy and mutually beneficial diplomacy allows for more international friends without needing to win them over. What does this mean? This means that East Asia fundamentally does not care about Europe. East Asia is not among the great powers. East Asia is a great power among great powers. East Asia has never owed Europe anything. It has neither invaded Europe nor plundered Europe. It has never enslaved the European people. However, Europe has consistently shown inexplicable hatred and animosity towards East Asia. It often equates East Asia with Russia. It even treats resolving issues with East Asia as an ultimate goal. Their leaders have repeatedly incited tension in talks with the US. They directly point out that East Asia is America's enemy. Is this Europe's goodwill towards East Asia? With East Asia's current strength and size, there is no need to win anyone over. No political entity on Earth can afford to win over East Asia. What is needed now is to continue developing. One should just watch from the riverbank, observing as the others float downstream. Among them, some will see the opportunity. Those with insight will come to discuss the future. If not, there's no need to force it. Respect others' destinies. What does America's attitude towards Europe indicate? It shows that the first power has begun to look down on the second power. It truly intends to treat the EU as a pawn. Europe sees Russia being discarded. The next will undoubtedly be itself. It's often said that European countries have high welfare. Everyone has healthcare. Having a child incurs no costs. High unemployment benefits. All industries are high-paying. Overtime is never allowed. A month of vacation each year, and so on. But why do Europeans deserve such welfare, while countries in Asia struggle? It's simply because Western Europe completed industrialization first. Every country has a few industries that are globally leading. They earned excessive profits, and they blocked latecomers through various patent restrictions. In the decades after World War II, only South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan initially made strides. They captured a few industries, although they took a slice of the pie. These countries or regions are relatively small, and the US often takes action against them. With rapid global technological development, the total pie is expanding, thus having little impact on Western Europe's economy. Until it was East Asia's turn to rise with its large population. The system advantages ensure concentrated efforts in major projects. So, this century, small industries with various private enterprises can withstand larger industries. Each industry is now being surpassed by East Asia, and Europe has basically no advantages left. Global technology is now facing bottlenecks. Incremental growth is decreasing. Everyone can only compete within the existing limits. Europe, having undergone so-called democratization and high welfare policies, has found it difficult to muster the strength to resist. It is often said that Europe works less but receives a larger share of the pie is not natural. It has just maintained for too long. Everyone has gotten used to it. Good days have lasted too long, leading to forgetfulness about sharing the pie. Has anyone considered that it's not the great powers harvesting Europe, but rather that Europeans originally took too much? Now, it's just that the pie is beginning to be distributed normally. In the 1950s to 70s, the US GDP accounted for 33% to 56% of the world. The US stock market saw a maximum increase of 5 times. Industrial output accounted for 43% of the global total. Gold reserves accounted for 72% of the global total. In 1960, the US GDP exceeded that of the combined total of the last 8 countries, surpassing Japan, France, and the UK. However, today, the US can only maintain its hegemony by undermining Europe. Europe can only seek basic survival space by pleading with East Asia. Currently, the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire and Europe being divided among 3 powers, what impact does this have on us? First, after Europe disintegrates, wealth will flow to East Asia. We can acquire more markets and resources. The long-accumulated technology of Europe will also spill out due to internal conflicts. Our technology will seize the opportunity to flourish in Europe. Secondly, Europe's influence in the Indo-Pacific region will significantly weaken. In recent years, the US and France have tried to meddle in the South China Sea issues, but they have their own problems and lack the time for such matters. You might ask, what about NATO? Will the US realign with Europe? There is no need to worry. The US wants to withdraw from NATO. It wants Europe to protect itself. Russia aims to take Ukraine directly, even the entirety of Eastern Europe. The decline of Europe is now a certainty. In the next decade, we will witness the collapse and reconstruction of the European order. At this historical juncture, one must see the larger trends clearly, seize the opportunities, contribute to the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. If anyone wants to learn more about changes in the international landscape, please like and follow me. In the next episode, he will analyze how East Asia can utilize Europe's decline to gain greater benefits. Oh. See you next time.